identity, more like identities nuts. I'm gonna be wet for this whole video now. Should give you a little ASMR, give you a little. As I'm gurgling the bubbles, it's like double bubbles. In today's video, we'll be researching the effects of carbonated water on the thoughts of oneself and the labels they choose. I don't know what I'm saying. Okay. Got a strained relationship with identity, to say the least. I can't remember any part of my life where I felt strongly enough to categorize who I am by things I do, the things I enjoy. Of course, I've worn some labels, I've worn some identity, played sports growing up, so I guess you could call me a hockey player. You can't call me an Australian though, because my accent is shit. I wanted to make some point there about how, like, oh, you can wear an accent like you can wear a label, but yeah, I have a strained relationship with identity. In my mind, it's not something that makes sense. I have this inner view of self as this whole, complete person, and that person isn't static. It is the person who is capable of being and doing so many things at the same time, and life being linear and confined to one body as it is often means that I am forced to only be one or maybe two of anything I can be at any given time. When I went to college, I wanted to study everything. I remember they gave me this one packet and it had 70 different things on it, and they just wanted me to cross out ones that I would not be interested in, and I crossed out maybe like 10. So I had to choose between like philosophy and math and economics and debate and wildlife sciences and cow fisting. No, don't say cow fisting. Don't say cow fisting. I was thinking, it was just like, you know, when like you go in the and like they, you know, like it's for like the health. I guess that'd be under wildlife science. I went to school with a good ag program. Okay, don't get all high and mighty. People gotta help cows out. Okay, it's not for my pleasure. It's for their health. I've never seen a cow in real life, other than when I drive past them in a car. Huh. Anyways, I ended up getting a math and a theater degree. Woo! But by choosing those paths, I ultimately shut down the other ones. It doesn't mean that I can't go back and pursue those paths or get those degrees or get knowledge about any of those subjects. It just means that I could not be a fresh out of high school undergrad studying, you know, economics. That's not what I did. Since time passes and part of who you are is identified by your place, both in time on a timeline, like throughout all of human history, and time on a timeline of your own, like, personal life expectancy, there's context that you can't choose. You can't fit all identities into one thing. I remember even younger, not really knowing how to identify myself with anything. I mean, I played sports. I was a hockey player. In a sense, it was ball hockey, though. I was very specific that it was ball hockey because I played ball hockey. Did not play ice hockey. I don't know how to ice skate like that. Like, I'm okay. I'm a little wobbly around the ankles every now and then, but I'm good. I can't really go backwards. Like, I couldn't play defense in a hockey league. Hell, I could probably barely shoot a hockey puck. But with, like, a couple months, I'd be decent. Playing a beer league, you know? Beer league, they got those. They call them beer leagues. I've been watching a lot of TSN, been watching a lot of Bar Down recently. I watch a fuck ton of YouTube. I've been getting back into hockey because the Blackhawks got the first pick in Connor Bedard, and the Blackhawks were my team growing up, and I haven't watched them for the past 10 years since they won the Stanley Cup in 2013, which is coincidentally the year that I stopped playing hockey. Ball hockey. Yeah, now I'm back into them. There are labels that were assigned to me that I wore because I agreed with them. I was a math smart kid. Was it a point of pride for me to be of like academic high standing? Yeah. It was only who I was until I realized that I got to decide who I was in my early teenage years, and that's when the whole kind of can of worms cracked open for me, and it became really hard for me to define myself by anything. The reason being is I realized just how much potential the self has to be, at any point in time, anything. Ever. Look, I'm an ASMR artist now. That's my identity. Realizing that there are so many things I could be, and a label felt limiting. For instance, one thing I did in high school is I started running cross country. There was a certain way to interact on a cross country team. There's a certain way to interact on a chess club. There's a certain way to interact in a group of 16-year-old boys who grew up in my specific suburb and went to my specific high school. It's all categorization. It's all identity. There is no guide on how to be the person you're supposed to be in your life based on the things that you choose to do. Identity kind of blew up at that point for me. There's this AJJ lyric stuck to me when I found it around 15 or 16. There's a bad man in everyone, no matter who you are. There's a rapist and a Nazi living in our tiny hearts. Child pornographers and cannibals and politicians too. There's someone in your head waiting to fucking strangle you. So here's to you, Mrs. Robinson. Who would have thought this kid had a folk punk phase in high school? Yellow coat wearing motherfucker had a folk punk phase. What? Oh, that's so XD random? What? But I did. That lyric really made sense to me at that time. And it was one of my favorite things because I so wholeheartedly agreed with it. You know, I didn't think I was a Nazi, I didn't think I was a cannibal, I didn't think it was all these other things. But I realized that since someone in the world has been one of those things, it means that me as a person, being no different than any other person fundamentally, you know, with the same capabilities and limitations and potential pitfalls, I could also, in another set of circumstances, in another life, in another time, become one of those things. I am not better than somebody because I have not become something evil or despicable or something that I don't like. And that, of course, doesn't kind of take the autonomy away from that person. I think there are a lot of choices that people make in order to become these terrible things, and you know, they still do have to deal with the consequences of their actions. However, you know, I could set up a hypothetical scenario for me or anyone really to become anything. You are, especially at that young age, what you are raised to be. It's really hard to be anything other than that. If you're a child who grows up trusting, loving, and engaging in your environment, and your environment is what tells you to be this person, you're probably going to be that person. It would just take one shift of societal norms. Like, take cannibalism, for instance. If cannibalism was normalized, we'll put in like a post-death, like sacred ritual type, right? Where after a family member dies, it is a custom for people to, I don't know, have the coroner kind of deliver them like a thigh, and you eat that together as a family in order to consume and acknowledge the like passed on life of a loved one. If that were to become normal, then yeah, most people in today's society would be cannibals, because that is the situation in which they were raised. That's what that means to me, right? This idea of a label is just the label and all the associations with it. Societally, I have no control over and could be easily affected by. I am grateful to be who I am and raised in the environment I was raised in that didn't shape me to be or even trend towards any of these terrible things. And I recognize that while that is, for the most part, the standard, most people are not raised in environments which make them become terrible people. Still consider myself lucky to have that. With this recognition of a potential extreme evil inside of literally everybody, it also made me realize that there is a potential for extreme good within everybody. And we can get into the whole conversation of whether or not good or evil really exists. And again, I think that is largely based on the society you're in and a sort of like joined moral value. I think we get a lot of values as a group rather than outside of the individual. But I'm not going to go into that because those are just words that came out of my mouth. I don't know if I quite agree with them yet. They just... There's probably some truth in there. Regardless, there's a potential for these great, amazing, good person in everybody as well. That was another aspect that made identity hard to grapple with. It's like, okay, if I wanted to identify by my academics, for instance, they weren't the best they could possibly be, but they were good. The same way I didn't feel superior to anybody who didn't identify by good academics, it also made me not feel inferior to anybody who did really identify with perfect academics, simply because, I mean, okay, cool, you know, you've straight A's and you got completely perfect test scores. I was close enough to all that to where I felt comfortable. I gave what I wanted to give, which was the bare minimum in my opinion, and I got more than anybody could ask for. A kid doesn't understand why they're smart. I don't get it either. I don't understand why, for some reason, I was more inclined to succeed academically than my family or my friends or whatever. It's not some sort of point of superiority for me. Maybe the school environment was better for me. Maybe I learned and retained information easier in a classroom setting. Maybe I knew how to take tests better. Maybe my brain was just more elastic for certain areas that were taught in school. That's not any sort of determination of who I am. It is something that doesn't define me, but I can be defined by. I was comfortable being defined by it actually for a little bit, but as I grew up and got older, I really felt it sort of being this insidious thing to identify with, is this idea of that, oh, I'm smart. Because smart doesn't feel like anything I've earned or done. It feels like me being wired to succeed in a system that currently exists. And as I've discussed, systems are not natural. They change all the time. They are built upon the backs of centuries and centuries and centuries of tradition, which if we look into anything in Western society, we're going to see that the ideals that these traditions were based on are not to be desired. Putting my identity in self as a smart person felt ultimately worthless, because really I was just putting identities at this unnameable biological thing inside of me that either made me able to retain information better or made me care more about retaining information better in specific circumstances than 99% of people that I went to school with. That doesn't feel good. That puts my sense of self in this kind of untangible, before I was born, genetic barrier reef that I can swim through and try to find, but I'll just see that it's kind of dying out over time. None of that made sense. It begs the question, what is the purpose of identifying with anything? Of course, it's a way for other people to label me and see me and put me in a box, and that's easier, which I think is fine. For instance, something I did this year is I have this VHS camera right here. What I did with this VHS camera is I went to this one hotel bar every Thursday for 4 months because an artist I like named Alex Cameron was having a residency there. And I went to go there with his camera and I would film all the shows, and it was a fun time. And people got to know me as, the dude with the VHS camera. So in my head, these people labeled me as, name stage, VHS videographer, which is helpful because then if they were talking to somebody who wanted VHS video, they'd be like, hey, I know this guy who's done it. I'm just like a box that has a bunch of fucking stickers on it, and they go and they hear something, the information goes in, and they try and match it with a sticker that's on a box, and they open that box, right? Labels are an incomplete picture of somebody. They are just a way to slowly, thing by thing, build up your perception of another person. In a world and a body in which we unfortunately do not have enough time to deeply get to know everybody we care about or meet, labels are useful. Labels are extremely useful. Not only as a way for someone else to identify me, it's also for self. I can describe myself with certain understandable labels that I want other people to view me as, and I can give that out to them. Is it who I am? No. But is it a way that they would describe me to somebody else? Yes. Because without labels, what would you describe me as? Try to describe me to somebody else without using what I do at all. Go for it. First level is based on perception and appearance, just kind of as a natural state. The secondary level of identity is all about action, and this sort of third level of identity is the guiding principles behind each action. As we go down, I get more and more comfortable with labeling myself as any of these things. I am extremely uncomfortable identifying myself by my looks because I'm fully aware of how quickly all of these things change. Then we go to things I do, and the things I do also change quite a bit because depending on how you know me, you might know me as someone who has worked in a restaurant with you. You might know me as the VHS videographer. You might know me as someone who makes music. You might know me as someone who makes YouTube videos. You might know me as a chess coach. You might know me as someone who's not a chess coach but is a chess player who beat Anna Kramlin one time in a video on coffee chess. Yeah, I did that, fuckers. Woo! I'm really proud of that, actually. But even on that tertiary level, I still do feel uncomfortable labeling myself as curious or inquisitive or thoughtful. If I identify by one thing in one moment, does that mean I have to hold that identity with me for the rest of my life? It often feels so. I think for all of my labels, I would like to put the phrase right now after them. Oh yeah, I live in LA right now. I am making YouTube videos right now. I'm making music right now. Because that's all they are. They are temporary. I don't see labels being viewed with that sort of temporal leniency. You know, they're very static. They're very, this is who you are forever. Maybe that comes from, you know, the sort of corporate hellscape we've been in, which you stay in that same job for the rest of your life, and that is who you are. If you're a salesperson, you're going to be a salesperson until you're a manager, and then you're going to get promoted and eat the money and shit babies. I don't fucking know what they do up there. Identity has these 3 layers, and identifying by who I am and what I do, while I recognize is extremely useful, I really wish I had that caveat of this is temporary, because all identity is temporary and all being is temporary, which is why I really like to meet people on that sort of tertiary level of identity, and I like to skip a lot of small talk, because I don't want to know what you're doing. I want to know how you do things and how you like to be yourself. If your career and your life changed completely, you moved to the other side of the world, started doing something completely different, you ate different, you worked different, you walked different, everything about you was different, what about you would stay the same? What are those things that aren't going to change? And I think the only level that exists on is that tertiary level of how you approach doing something, the parts of yourself that you find over and over and over and over and over again, no matter where you are or what you're doing or what you're looking at or what you dress like or what you ate that day. I want to know. And if there aren't those aspects about you that you know yet, I think that's fucking great. Maybe that one thing that's similar is that all your dreams are nightmares. Or maybe that one thing that's similar is that you always approach a person on the street talking to you with a sort of warm curiosity. Or maybe that something as similar is that once you learn something new, you repeat it in your head 5 times just because. What would stay the same if everything about you changed? That's what I want to identify as. Maybe that doesn't exist. Maybe there is fully just this different version of you that can exist in which there is nothing similar about you at all. Yeah, I got intense. Jesus fucking Christ. I understand and respect the importance of labels on those primary and secondary levels of self. Yeah, while those layers are transactional, we do live in a transaction-based world, and in order to survive, you need people to kind of be buying what you're selling, you know, especially if you're someone who's trying to sell. Like, for instance, this is my outfit that I decided was going to make me hot in my last video. My whole last video was about me trying to be as hot as I possibly can, and I chose this. So you're getting hot me today. I wanted you to believe that I was a hot YouTuber who always overthinks about things. Did that work? Is that what you think of me? Is that what you think of me? little more ASMR on the